Hi everyone. In this video, I'm going to show you how to use the template we've created to create lessons for the students of Project Kakuma. So, a few things. First of all, we'd like to thank you for volunteering your time and expertise. This is an ambitious project and it couldn't be done without your assistance. So we thank you for volunteering for this. In this activity or in this video, I'm going to introduce you to our learners and our learning space. We will do a quick overview of our lessons. We'll do a brief overview of the template as well, so you're familiar with that and how it works. We'll do a quick overview as well of the three-part lesson, Mindson, Action, and Consolidation. We'll talk about how to add audio to your slides, and finally, we'll talk about the use of images and smart art. Okay, so let's get started. So first of all, this image is a mock-up of what the student's learning space will look like from the outside. Essentially, students will be accessing your lessons in these large tents that are equipped with the technology that will help them do that. This technology includes a device that provides local Wi-Fi. So basically, the lessons will be loaded onto this device that will broadcast a local Wi-Fi signal that can be picked up by laptops and desktops that are in the two tents. Students, importantly, will not have resources with them. So what this means is that students will not have pencils or paper or any other utensils that they can use at that moment aside from the computer itself. Okay, so when you think about how you're going to plan your lessons, you're going to have to take that into account. You can't ask the students to move away from the computer and write something because they don't have access to those resources. Okay, so we need to think about how we can use the computer that's in front of them, and again, a computer that's not really connected to Wi-Fi, connected to the internet, in order to do that. And that means that everything the students need should be in the lesson itself. So when you build your lesson, you're going to have to give them the resources necessary for them to learn whatever we need them to learn. Okay? Let's take a quick look at our lessons and see how those will be structured. You will create your lessons in PowerPoint using this very template. You will also add audio files to each slide to help students understand the content. In the past, we have tried to use videos, but the videos result in much bigger files, and those files are going to be difficult to transmit via this local Wi-Fi that we will be working with. So instead, you will be adding audio files to each slide. Our target is that each lesson should be no longer than 15 minutes long. So I think that will give you an understanding of how much content and how much work you will need in that 15-minute span. Now, let's take a quick look at the template itself. So, and I'll show you this in a moment as well. When you get the template that looks just like the screen does now, you'll have the option of changing the unit name in the lesson title. So here I have the unit name, just introduction, and the lesson title that I've placed here. You will change that in the PowerPoint slide itself. We don't want you to mess with the font sizes, however. So we have chosen these font sizes because they meet accessibility standards for those students who might have difficulty reading smaller fonts. So please leave the font sizes as you see them. We'd also like you to avoid changing color, the dark colors in particular, because that contrast is necessary, again, for those students who may struggle with vision. And as you populate your PowerPoint with content, we want you to think about how you're going to use the text. I'm sure you have seen slides from students or maybe even from teachers. They're just jammed full of text, and it's almost like you're looking at this wall of information. And it can be both overwhelming and a little bit dry. So we really want you to choose the text you're going to use very carefully, and instead rely on your narration, that audio file you're going to add, to really add the emphasis and the key ideas. So let's go briefly, and I'll show you how you can change the lesson and the template. So I'm going to exit the view we have here. I'm going to go to this view, and you can see here that on each slide we have a table here that you can just simply click in to change those, to change that text. I would recommend too that when you actually see your PowerPoint, your template, you'll notice obviously that it will be blank through here because I've added this information for this video today. And you'll start with 4 slides. The main slide here, the title screen. You'll have one in the Mindson. You'll have one under action, and you'll have one under consolidation. And so what you'll do is you'll add more slides as you go. But I would suggest as soon as you get that template to switch the title of the unit and the title of the lesson, just so every time you duplicate a slide, that information is already contained in that slide for you. So while we're here, let's talk briefly about the Mindson, the action, and the consolidation. Okay, and as you can see here, I do have 3 sections for you already laid out. So under Mindson, action, and consolidation, we have the slides. And we've done that simply to help you keep your work neat and allow you to clearly see the flow between your slides. So let's go back to full screen here. The idea behind Mindson is that it's usually about a minute or two. In a 15-minute lesson, I wouldn't make the Mindson more than a minute at all. The goal of the Mindson is to get the students thinking. So this is where you can ask them a question, surprise them with a startling fact, just get them thinking so their minds are on the topic you want them to consider. The action is where most of the lesson takes place. It's where you want to explain things clearly. And I've already mentioned the text once, but I think it's also important for us to consider that we don't want to simply read the text. We have to strike a balance between reading the text that we have on the screen, but also engaging with the audience, right? So make sure that there's an appropriate balance there. Really important in the action section is that you have to give students something to do. And if you think about your own classes, we don't lecture for the entire length of the period and give the students nothing to do but sit and listen, right? So what complicates that issue for us here is that, again, you're not in front of the students, this is not live, and they don't have necessarily the resources to do work on their own using paper and pencil. So instead, we need to give them something to do that can be done within the body of the lesson itself. And so one way I think you can do that is you can ask questions of the student on one slide and have them check their answer before they move to the next slide. So I'm going to give you an example of that in a moment, and we'll see. Hopefully that will show you how that works. And the last section of the template is the consolidation section. And the consolidation section is simply the place where you want to wrap up big ideas. If you want to think of this as a review of the lesson, that's a great strategy. You might also want to leave your students with something to consider or think about once they leave the lesson itself. But let's go back to that action example. And I said I was going to give you a question that would allow you to understand how to use this structure with students. So let's imagine that this is the question I'm asking now. What are some things to consider when recording audio for slides? So I'm going to give you a moment or two just to think about what your response may be. Okay. And now what we're going to do is move on to the next slide. And I think that sort of simple technique is the one way that we could have students do something within the body of our activity in a way that doesn't force them to rely on resources they don't have. So remember that you'll be working with a PowerPoint slide. So that means that the students can think for as long as they wish before they actually click the arrow and move on to that next slide with your answer to that question. So let's take a look at our new topic here, which is working with audio. A few things I want to point out to you about recording audio in PowerPoint. First, we want to go to the insert bar. And next, we want to click on the audio button, which should be on the far right. And we want to choose record audio. When you do that, you'll see this window pop up. It's very small. I would suggest, now you don't have to do this, but I think it might make your life a little bit easier. I would suggest renaming that sound, that recorded sound file. And I would suggest using the slide number. So you happen to be on slide number 5, you might want to call this sound 5 or sound 6. Just so it's a little bit easier for you to see which sound file you're working with. Next, you want to click the red button to record. Okay. And when you're finished speaking, you'll hit the stop button. And what you'll see is an audio file that has been created that looks like this. Okay. So when you click on this file, when you click here, it will now play, which is great. But what we want to do is we want to have this audio play as soon as the viewer, the student, clicks to this slide. So what I want you to do is you'll click on the sound file here, which will bring up this contextualized bar from PowerPoint called playback. You'll click on playback and you'll click on start and you will choose start automatically. And so this setting down here, start automatically, will force that sound file to play as soon as the user switches to that slide. Okay? So let's take a look now. Let's take a look now at microphone considerations. So obviously, not everyone will have access to microphones like this, but still, there are a few things we can do to make sure that the sound is as good as it possibly can be. First of all, we would like you to use the most reliable microphone you have. If there's one that you've used for Skype calls or other audio files that you feel works really well, please feel free to use that mic. As for the placement of the mic, you certainly want the microphone close to you, close enough so that it picks up your voice, but you also don't want it too close. So this device right here is used for professionals or by professionals so that they can get their mouth really close to the microphone. This device prevents the microphone from picking up the sound of their breathing. If they really overly pronounce certain letters like a P, this will block some of that air that may interfere with the sound. So if you have one of these devices, great. If you don't, what I would suggest is putting your microphone slightly off to the side. So right now I am looking at my laptop as I record this video for you. I have a really nice microphone set just to the side of my laptop. It's about maybe 30 centimeters away from my face, but it's about 20 centimeters off to my left. And so what that means is the microphone can still clearly pick up my voice, but it's hopefully not picking up the sound of me breathing or popping peas or any kind of sound I'm making that may make it difficult for you to listen to the sound of my voice, which honestly is challenging enough as it is. So let's briefly talk now about images and how we're going to use them. So obviously, images are a powerful way of communicating information, but there are a few issues with them. If you think back to the beginning of this video, when I said that we are going to use local Wi-Fi to send the PowerPoint to students on devices, you might be able to understand why it's so important for us to keep those file sizes small. So what we need to avoid is large images that really magnify the size of the file itself. So if I escape from the slide view and I decide to add an image, if I choose to add an image that I took with a really good camera that has really high pixel count, it will add 2, maybe 3 megabytes to the size of this file. And if we add an image like that every single time, it's going to dramatically increase the size of the file itself. Now, each audio file that we add to each slide is going to be roughly 1 megabyte per minute. And if you think back to the fact that we said the presentation is going to be 15 minutes or less, we're already looking at 15 megabytes in file size. If you start adding high quality images to each slide, that PowerPoint could easily get up into the range of 60 to 70, even higher in our megabyte count, and we want to avoid that. So a few things I want to point out to you. So certainly you could add images other ways, but generally using the online picture option provided by PowerPoint is a good way of limiting the file size. So I would default to this if you can for searching for images. Another way that it can be a really effective method of adding some visual content to your slides is to use what's called Smart Art. So if you click on Smart Art here, you have a number of different options for how you arrange your structure. And you'll see as we look at all of them, we've got a brief summary of what those things do, right? So let's imagine we're looking at a process, and let's imagine I choose something like this. It will instantly add that Smart Art to our slide. I can move that Smart Art down here if I wish. I can control the size. I can change the color scheme if I wish, and I can add text here, and I can add images here too, right? And as long as those images aren't really big, then we will not increase the size of the PowerPoint file dramatically. So again, please do use images where you think they are appropriate, but just keep in mind that really big images will increase the file size of your PowerPoint dramatically. Okay, so finally, let's go to our last slide. If you remember, I told you that consolidation would be a place where you can review ideas and wrap up some thinking. So with that in mind, let's go over just a few reminders, things we want to keep in mind as we make our PowerPoints. First, I really do want you to think about our learners and our learning space when you make your PowerPoint. What do they need? What do they have? And what don't they have? And that environment that they're working in. Remember that they're going to be accessing this through donated computers and a local Wi-Fi. So we have to keep their needs in mind as we move forward. Lynn and Kirsten have done a great job of preparing the curriculum for you, making sure you have access to it. It's really important that we meet those expectations, so please stick with the guidelines they have provided. Definitely use our template. We've kept it really simple and clean, hopefully to give students a sense of where they are in a given lesson, but also to give you lots of space to work with, right? So please use that template. It will be a lot easier to maintain a sense of consistency between the various lessons. Really important that you apply the 3-part lesson plan, focusing on minds on, action, and consolidation. Remember to please add audio to your slides and keep some of our rules in mind about what good audio sounds like. And finally, use images and Smart Art wisely. Okay. So once again, on behalf of our team, I want to thank you for volunteering your time and your energy and your expertise to this project. And happy lesson planning.